When I first saw the sign coming down on Sand Lake Road back in 1996, November 1996, and I saw the eyes, when I went home and I noticed that as I was turning down International Drive, heading back home, I saw this sign. It was after getting home at Snowflake that before I turned down Americana, I saw this sign. So when I got home on a map, I marked them off. And when I marked them off, I saw that they came into a triangle, and it was the house inside that created the signal, the point, showing you that it was dealing with the Great Pyramid here. Because one of the houses that went inside of this layout. I noticed because my sign was put up, and then this sign was put up after this, that Busch Gardens, representing Africa, created Africa in the pyramid. And then to go even further, Busch Gardens, as it came to my attention quickly, that Busch Gardens deals with a brewery. Being that I went there when I was a child, I remember going through the brewery and showing their demonstration of when they were giving out samples of beer just by this strip alone here back in '72. This is when actually Anheuser-Busch actually owned Busch Gardens. So I was familiar with that, smelling the beer as we walked through how they were making beer. That was one of the tours they had. And meeting Rosetta Enoch, who at the time we just called Aunt Rosetta. And this was the Christmas. And this is the astronaut flight suits. So the idea of Enoch coming back to me, Rosetta, the Rosetta Stone, the Boucher, the name of the person that found the Rosetta Stone in 1798, 1799. Now I'm going to show you the coming forth by day, coming forth by night, as this was brought back to my attention at this time as an adult. The idea of pyramid power was brought up here during this case, which I said it back in 1997. As I said, I stuck to what I was dealing with. It wasn't about what they thought it was. I told them this was greater than what they had, because their laws are wishy-washy. And I was telling them about the laws that are the eternal laws. Considering this didn't exist. And I first want to show you that when we talk about the story or the idea of a myth, and how is it that when I said that Orlando itself was coming forth by day, coming forth by night, someone might say, why is it that? What does this have to do with America? What does it have to do with Florida? What does the Bible have to do with America? What does the Bible have to do with America? It does not have anything mentioned in it. Many people will try to make it as if it does by using some names that don't even mention this country, mention this hemisphere. That's why they call it the New World, because it was not mentioned in the Bible. But people try to include, or they try to manipulate that it is, by claiming that they have there was revelations, like for the Mormons, about when Joseph Smith mentioned about that, saying that Jesus came to America before the Europeans had came here earlier, and that he was here a long time ago. And this is one of the things they try to combine the Bible with the United States. So when you say, well, what does this have to do with it? Because it's not mentioned. This is a country, not a world. But when you're dealing with the sun is the light of the world, and this story of the sun is everywhere. So it could be in China, it can be in Japan, it can be in Central South America. It's everywhere. So to begin, we have to go back to here. With a word, it says, Tut's tomb awaits. That says Bush Gardens. Come explore Egypt. And this is when I went, the words that came to me on December 17th when I woke up. Come explore Egypt, which to me meant to go to Egypt. This was me to go to Egypt. And by this time, I was aware that this was not the face of King Tutankhamun. That I knew at this point that this was Osiris. Saying when they opened up the tomb in 1922, because the house had said downtown 1924, which is in the same time, which meant the step coming down from heaven, showing you the Orion step into earth, Osiris step into earth. Here is the face of Osiris. It's like saying a butterfly is a caterpillar, or a caterpillar is a butterfly, which turns into a butterfly. Then this is the same way when King Tutankhamun was placed in the tomb. After all was done, he became Osiris. So when you opened up the tomb, that was the image. It was Osiris, not King Tutankhamun. This is where people get the mistake of believing that that's what it meant. It was because they seen the inscriptions. They believe that it's King Tutankhamun, but this is Osiris, and I'm going to show you how and why it is.
The most powerful gods, Isis and Osiris, appears throughout funerary texts and art. King Tut's iconic death mask bears Osiris's likeness, while symbols of Isis are etched across his coffin.
Now you just saw that the face, the likeness, is Osiris, not King Tutankhamun, which a lot of people like to say that it's Tut. They opened up the tomb, that was Osiris. So here it is that when you see this face, it's not King Tutankhamun, it's Osiris. And so at this point, when we know that the coming forth by day, coming forth by night, and in Bush Gardens deals with beer, and in the Book of the Dead, coming forth by day, coming forth by night, it is about Osiris and Ra, and it's telling you about the Enod itself, the story. So let me show you the story here, because like I said, this came to me back then, and I was in Egypt a month and a half from, this was November 5th when I saw this sign, and by December 28th I was stepping foot into Egypt, just from this Come Explore Egypt alone. And then you see downtown today, you'll see it says Exploria, and then you see the Osiris Rex, it says Explore, the EX, the Osiris Rex, the probe, where I'm showing you here on Earth physically, whereas people would say, well, how can you show this here? Because most people can't show anything when they say something. They just tell you and it's a dream or it's something in the vision, but they never show you the vision. They never show you what it is. Here it is, I'm showing you how Osiris creates the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid, everybody knows, is related to Osiris because it's related to Orion, which Orion is related to Osiris, which I've been saying and showing all these years. It never went off of it. I didn't jump into anybody else's belief. I didn't back off. I didn't put it aside. This is here. And this is why now here you see Isis. That came after I said that. After I went into court and told them Isis appears. And I'm going to show you because Isis is what they call great of magic. And it was Isis who created beer. Brewing beer. That's where the beer came from, was Isis. So here's Isis who created beer, which is showing you Busch Gardens, the brewery, connecting it to beer. And then here is Isis here again after the fact, when these are removed, Isis is here, showing you how this came about. So I'm going to show you the story here so you can see it for yourself. And here is sunrise, high noon, sunset. And I'm going to show you the story of sunrise, high noon, sunset right here, showing you this is what it is. It is not, I'm not moving one way or the other. I'm showing you here. Remember, Busch Gardens replaced the exhibit with this here in 2013. And then this here, the Uraeus itself, which you see is King's Point now.
Video about the myth of the destruction of mankind, included in the book of the Heavenly Cow, we saw how the god Ra, after creating humans from his tears, lived among them on earth as a wise and just ruler, and how evil filled the hearts of humans who made fun of him because they noticed that Ra was approaching old age. So Ra decided to destroy the human race, and before they perished, he regretted and had compassion on them and saved a group of them. Then he decided to leave the earth and dwell in heaven, still running their lives in the ship of the sun, the source of life. The power of the god Ra stemmed from a holy secret name that no one else knew. Whoever knew or obtained that name possessed the power to do whatever he wanted. In this myth, the myth of Isis and Ra, Isis was depicted as a cunning, great enchantress and healer. She created a magical serpent out of dust and the spittle of Ra. She placed the serpent on the path that the sun god usually took when he was traveling by day, and the serpent bit him. Ra had power over all things, so he ordered the poison to leave his body. However, as the serpent had been made from Ra's own spittle, he was unable to cure himself. Isis could have saved him, but she did this only when Ra revealed his secret name to her. He did this on condition that she would reveal it only to her son, Horus. Thus, knowing the secret name of Ra, Isis was equal to the sun god in power. But what were the intentions of Isis to do this? There are various interpretations. It was said that Isis takes this action using her cunning to help mankind in order to compel Ra to move away from the world, and by so doing allow people and animals to flourish. Apparently, his fierce heat was drying out the land and causing great hardship to everyone. Isis, who was a compassionate soul, wept for the people and decided that if Ra could not be persuaded to change his ways, then she would force him to do so. It was also said that Isis played her trick in order to obtain the power needed to miraculously give birth to her son Horus. Several ancient Egyptian manuscripts show that this myth was used as a healing incantation to remove poison from a patient. The myth had different versions, as shown in Papyrus Turin 1993 and Papyrus Chester BT2. Here is one of the variant versions, as translated and summarized by Professor Wallace Budge in his books, The Book of the Dead, The Papyrus of Ani, and The Literature of the Ancient Egyptians. The legend opens with a list of the titles of Ra, the self-created God, the creator of heaven, earth, breath of life, fire, gods, men, beasts, cattle, reptiles, feathered fowl, and fish. The king of gods and men, to whom cycles of 120 years are as years, whose manifold names are unknown even by the gods. Isis had the form of a woman and knew words of power, but she was disgusted with men, and she yearned for the companionship of the gods and the spirits. And she meditated in her heart, saying, "Cannot I, by means of the sacred name of God, make myself the mistress of the earth, and become a goddess like unto Ra in heaven and upon earth?" Meanwhile, Ra appeared in heaven each day upon his throne, but he had become old, and he dribbled at the mouth, and his spittle fell on the ground. One day, Isis took some of the spittle and kneaded up dust in it, and made this paste into the form of a serpent with a forked tongue, so that if it struck anyone, the person struck would find it impossible to escape death. This figure she placed on the path on which Ra walked as he came into heaven after his daily survey of the two lands. Soon after this, Ra rose up, and attended by his gods, he came into heaven. But as he went along, the serpent drove its fangs into him. As soon as he was bitten, Ra felt the living fire leaving his body, and he cried out so loudly that his voice reached the uttermost parts of heaven. The gods rushed to him in great alarm, saying, "What has happened?" At first Ra could not answer, for his jaws trembled, and all his members quaked. The poison spread swiftly through his flesh, just as a Nile invadeth all his land. When he was able to regain a little strength, he cried unto the gods, saying, "Come unto me, O ye who have come into being from my body. Ye gods who have come forth from me, a dire calamity has fallen upon me. My heart perceiveth it, but my eyes see it not. My hand hath not caused it, nor do I know who has done this unto me. Never have I felt such pain, neither can sickness cause more woe than this. I am a great one, the son of a great one, and my father planned my name. I have multitudes of names and multitudes of forms, and my existence is in every god. I have been proclaimed by the heralds, Timu and Horus, and my father and my mother uttered my name, but it has been hidden within me by him that begat me, who would not that the words of power of any seer should have dominion over me. I came forth to look upon that which I had made. I was passing through the world which I had created, when, lo, something stung me, but what I know not. Is it fire? Is it water? My heart is on fire, my flesh quaketh, and trembling hath seized all my limbs. All the gods round about him uttered the cries of lamentation. The children of every god came unto him in tears. Isis came with her healing words, and with her mouth full of the breath of life, with her enchantments which destroy sickness, and with her words of power which make the dead to live. And she said, "What is this, O divine Father? What is this? Hath a serpent bitten thee? Hath something made by thee lifted up its head against thee? Verily my words of power shall overthrow it. I will make it depart in the sight of thy light." Ra said to Isis, "I was passing along my path, and I was going through the two regions of my lands, according to my heart's desire, to to see that which I had created. When, lo, I was bitten by a serpent which I saw not. Is it fire? Is it water? I am colder than water. I am hotter than fire. All my flesh sweateth. I quake. My eye hath no strength. I cannot see the sky. And the sweat rusheth to my face, even as in the time of summer. Then Isis said, Father, tell me thy name, for he who can utter his own name liveth. Ra replied, I am the maker of heaven and earth. I knit together the mountains, and whatsoever liveth on them. I made the waters. I have made to come into being the great and wide sea. I have made the heavens. I have stretched out the two horizons like a curtain, and I have placed the soul of the gods within them. I open my eyes, and there is light. I shut my eyes, and there is darkness. At my command the Nile riseth, and the gods know not my name. I have made the hours, I have created the days. I bring forward the festivals of the year. I create the Nile flood. I make the fire of life, and I provide food in the houses. I am Khibri in the morning. I am Ra at noon, and I am Timu in the evening. Meanwhile, the serpent's poison was coursing through the veins of Ra, and the enumeration of his works afforded the god no relief from it. Then Isis said to Ra, Among all the things which thou hast named to me, thou hast not named thy name. Tell me thy name, and the poison shall come forth from thee. Ra still hesitated, but the poison was burning in his blood, and the heat thereof was stronger than that of a fierce fire. At length he said, Isis shall search me through, and my name shall come forth from my body, and pass into hers. Then Ra hid himself from the gods, and for a season his throne in the boat of millions of years was empty. When the time came for the heart of the god to pass into Isis, the goddess said to Horus,
just as it was written, showing you the glorified Osiris. And you see here the last words on the obelisk. Sunlight path, showing you here sunrise, high noon, sunset. And then you see here Isis facing the east. So here we show you that sunlight path as the story goes on. It shows you here sunlight path, and the story goes as Isis, as she formed the Uraeus out of dust, and she let it go on Ra, showing it bit him. So it bit him with the forked tongue, as it says in the story written thousands of years ago. And here it is, because it was in the path of him going through his daily route, sunrise, high noon, sunset. So she would have used the Uraeus with the forked tongue, and here's the fork right here. Where it would have hit Ra, coming out of from the dark, going into the light, showing you the path. It said it hit him out of nowhere. And this is here showing you a forked tongue. Right here. You could take it as being some type of fantasy, coincidence, or whatever. But just as anything else, we've been dealing with dimensions, multiple dimensions. And the fact that the Great Pyramid itself has power. Basically the pyramid power, and showing you that just as the Mall of Millennia, the SunTrust building downtown, how it's all connected. And the fact that we talk about the need. And I said that Sunlight Path, the signpost, was not up then because Orange Blossom Trail 441 was under construction. And this is on the story. It says, talked about the crowns, what's on checkers, crowns, and then showing you here that this layout and the way that the signpost goes to the direction of sunrise, showing you the Sunlight Path, was on purpose, but not because they did it on purpose, because it was instructed to them to do it, because there was no other signpost on this street on Orange Blossom Trail in the same angle, not one. This is the only signpost that was constructed in this angle. The only other one that I know of is on Lake Underhill, and that's all in East Orlando. This one here is the only one down, up and down the trail, 441, that is in this direction here, showing you the Sunlight Path, literally. And then here I said the forked tongue that bit Ra, that made him tell Isis the name, a secret name, where you see Isis over here with the Uraeus that bit him. This is why the crown you see here created out of triangles, which create the pyramid going each way, showing you the level here. Not all level, it's the Atif, the crown at Crown's Point. These are all the buildings that I've been on. King's Point, the Uraeus, the location. That's the last building in Crown's Point. The last building. And the dates. First building. Here it is, here. Uraeus. Backing up everything. Uraeus, here. All these places. All these markers, the buildings. Here, as you can see, here, all over here. So all these buildings on the Uraeus, showing you what I'm saying. So this is the crown of Osiris here, Crown's Point, with the Uraeus. This is showing you here, the Uraeus, showing you Crown Point, King's Point. And here you see the level that together they don't make the, showing you the same goal at Crown Point, King's Point. Here, the Uraeus, showing you at the end of the wording on the obelisk itself in Central Park. which refers back here. The Great Pyramid was built by the Nine as a physical stargate. Here. And going back to showing you why Central Park and why Orlando and why 638 West Anderson Street. Showing you the connection. Heliopolis. Here. Showing you this building, SunTrust, is showing you the same thing as a crown. It's connecting it back to the teeth. Crown point. Showing you the crown just the same as on, it says, the book, the ancient writing, talking about the sun life path. Heliopolis. Right here in Orlando. The kingdom of the sun, as it once was called. This is once the respect given to the people resting in peace. They were seen as mere souvenirs to the people that actually lived there. It was a trade, selling mummy bodies to Europeans to use as potions. But it wasn't until people started to pay more attention and get more respect for what was going on that they decide to make it more reverence to the people who were buried. But this is the way it was taught, the way that people carried these and respected them. Nobody does that to their ancestors. Nobody does that to their dead with respect. So when you see what I'm saying and then try to belittle when saying that it has nothing to do with people of African descent, this is what people have done, saying that this is what they do to their own ancestors. Nobody in the cultures, anybody around the world would do this to their own people. So the idea of the great magic itself dealing with Isis exists. No one can refute this without having any contrary evidence itself. Not just words, because people try to use words to say it and sound like it's because they don't believe it. They'll try to be sarcastic about it. But it's the idea that evidence only can show it that this is not what it is. The same way with Moses, and the story goes where he had to put down the snake, and then when said Pharaoh put down the snake, and then he put down his snake, and he showed with physical evidence, not just running a mouth, physical evidence. So the only thing that can go with this, that can contradict this or say it's not, is something else to show it that it is in the other direction. Not just running people's mouths as if they have all the answers, but don't show anything. Show something that disproves this. Don't say it, show it. Talked about how I was here at Park Central, and it kept reminding me New York, Park Central, Central Park, and this Grand Central Parkway is in New York, and Cleo's. And I kept saying to me, New York, that was 2013, it was 2014 where I kept having this, and I decided it was time to go back and go to Central Park, because it was so strong. So when I got there, I just went into Central Park after seeing my friends and family over there. Going back the way I used to walk through into Central Park from the west side, coming down West 90th Street. And was being at Westbrook, across the street from here, Cleo's, and being at Park Central, that Cleo, Central Park, kept coming back to me repeatedly. And it got to the point where I just had to go back because this kept reminding me of Central Park, Clio Central Park. Park in New York, and behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art, modern art itself. Here we have the obelisk itself, which is an Egyptian obelisk from the 18th dynasty, Tutmosis III. It was given to Julius Caesar, whereas for Julius Caesar from Augustus. And this is what I was saying earlier about the connection between Central Park and the Park Central and the experience itself in Orlando. Whereas the 18th dynasty, when the billboard sign appeared, was King Tutmosis. Is the great-grandfather, same dynasty. Now, all this was connected. Now, I've been to Egypt, but everything kept pointing back to Central Park. The last time I was here, which is on 96th Street, when I lived here. This has been 33 years. Here again, it's 33 years from the time of coming through Central Park in 1981. This happened to be now, 33 years later, that I'm here. And as you see, they call this thing Cleopatra's Needle, which Cleopatra had nothing to do with the construction of these obelisks, which in Orlando, you'll see these now in the Millennium area. Where I said it meant resurrection. Washington, D.C., you have the Washington Monument, which is 555, which I said was connected to the layout in Orlando. Here we have a 3,500-year-old obelisk with the writings on it, which is not stone, the spirit stone itself, speaking, connecting, bringing me back to this point to come see for myself, to hear me talk in front of this obelisk, which I say is connected to the experience of the Stargate. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you a connection that kind of confirms what I'm saying, which is not too far from here. But here it is. Right now it's going under some restoration. Same thing that happened with the Washington Monument. They did some restoration work and they had a scaffold around it for years. So at this point in time, it's being worked on. So this is about as close as I can get. But it's a lot closer than I was able to get prior to this. Again, Central Park. I knew there was a reason why I had to come back and come here for my vacation. 2014. This day, August 23rd, which is the same day that the sign was erected from the vision, from the experience in 1996, visiting 96th Street. 33 years ago since then, here I am, connecting this obelisk back to the experience in Orlando, 1996, 96th Street, Egyptian obelisk, Kemetic, spiritual connection, going to Egypt, coming home from Egypt, the three houses, the Orion, 18th dynasty, repeatedly, Sun Trust, the sun rays, Akhenaten, all it is connected back to here. I think these are just stones and writings
for no reason. Place that I grew up, lived, connecting to this, connecting to the fact that Augusta, dealing with St. Augustine, Florida, where the first settlers, European settlers came to the United States, were connected St. Augustine as to Augusta. This is connected to Augusta, connected to Orlando, the Three Lakes, Dade Pyramids, all connecting to this one thing. Back to back, unbroken chain. Florida, the lotus flower. New York, Empire State. Macy's, New York. Bloomingdale's, New York. The Millennium Mall, the two anchors. The object I said looks like the mall itself. All is connected. Bloomingdale's, founded in New York. Macy's, founded in New York. The obelisk is all around the Millennium area. Back to this. Back to what I was saying, the Washington Monument. All of these connected. No unbroken chain. From birth all the way. Growing up on Commander Avenue, George Washington, Washington Avenue. Back to Commander-in-Chief, Washington, D.C.
You're about to see a program that, as you would see the way that the obelisk is in Central Park, that I said it came to me to go up there, Cleo's, Central Park, Park Central, and that this America on Earth, saying that they had something about Central Park and New York that very few people knew about, but here I was in Orlando, and I was being called up there, and you could see that it was the same time, the scaffolding around the obelisk itself. And here it is that he's going to begin with the history of New York. And this is what connects what he's saying to the rest of everything in that program, to what I just said. He begins with the idea of New York being Amsterdam, and the fact that before then it was Wall Street, and then the English came through. It was English King Charles. And here you see the layout of a crown, going back again, dealing with Crown Point. Here is Kings Point again, Kings Point Boulevard. Where you say Kings Point, which is in Orlando off Sand Lake Road. This one here, King Charles, was when my father moved in 2012, coming from New York through St. Thomas after he retired. And he lived here from 2012 to 2021 or 22 until when he died in this house, 1740, King Charles. So here it is, the history of New York, showing you the obelisk, and he's going to talk about the obelisk, but you can't talk about the history without talking about how New York became what it is. And I'm showing you right here, going back to the power of the need, showing you from above. Now watch what they say. And listen.
The history that we were all taught growing up is wrong. My name is Scott Wolter, and I'm a forensic geologist. There's a hidden history in this country that nobody knows about. There are pyramids here, chambers, tombs, inscriptions. They're all over this country. We're going to investigate these artifacts and sites, and we're going to get to the truth. Sometimes history isn't what we've been told. The Big Apple. Out of the 8 million people that live in this city, I wonder how many of them stop to think about the history all around them. Wall Street is named after a barricade that used to be there. One built by Dutch settlers in 1624 to keep the English out. Back then, Manhattan was actually called New Amsterdam, until the English finally broke through and gained complete control of the island, renaming it New York. Clues to the past are hidden amongst the skyscrapers, subways, and street signs. I'm here because one New Yorker says she's discovered a mystery right in Central Park. A centuries-old tie between this modern city and ancient Egypt. That's a beautiful pendant. You must be Dorothy.
Yes, I am. Thank you. It's wonderful to see you, Scott. Here, sit down and let's talk. Do you know what this is?
I think so. That's a cartouche, and those symbols are Egyptian hieroglyphics. Cartouches are basically a rounded vertical oval shape that typically has the name of an Egyptian pharaoh. And they were often carved into stone and found inside the tombs of many of these pharaohs. And for archaeologists, they're very important because they can use them for dating. I don't think I know who that is, but I'll bet you do.
It's Thutmose III. He actually was one of the greatest pharaohs in Egypt because he expanded Egypt to its greatest size ever. And I did some research, and lo and behold, I found out that there's a monument in Central Park with this cartouche.
Really?
Yes.
Here in Central Park?
Here in Central Park. Why don't we go and take a look?
Sounds great. So your monument, it's an obelisk.
Many people in the city of New York and elsewhere don't even know that there is an Egyptian obelisk here.
So is this a real Egyptian obelisk?
Yes, it is known as Cleopatra's Needle.
It's covered in scaffolding. What's that all about?
Well, what happened was about 2.5 years ago, an associate and I, we sent some photographs of the obelisk in its current condition to the head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt.
So what exactly were you concerned about?
We saw some cracks. The hieroglyphs were eroded. We were concerned that this was a condition that was going to continue unless some attention was paid to it.
All you have to do is look at it. You can see that the corners at the base are very degraded. And on the second level of scaffolding, you can't even see the hieroglyphics. And even though this thing is a granite, which is generally a very hard and durable rock, in a climate like New York with many freeze-thaw cycles, if you don't take care of it, it's going to fall apart.
That's right.
You mentioned something about that cartouche being on here.
Since the scaffolding is up there, we really can't see it. So I do have some photos here that you can see the cartouche right there.
So we know that this is the cartouche for Thutmose III.
That's correct.
But what does the rest of the hieroglyphics say on this obelisk?
What it generally says is that Thutmose was a great pharaoh and that he extends his gratitude to Amun-Ra for his greatness.
Amun-Ra, that's the sun god.
Yes.
The most important god of all of Egypt, for the simple reason that without the sun, there would be nothing.
That's right. And they understood that energy.
Sure.
During the time of Thutmose, the top of the pyramid, what's called the capstone, would have been covered in gold. And that would have radiated all over. And there were over 100 obelisks. And these all would have been lighting up all of ancient Egypt.
When Dorothy mentioned there were more obelisks like this, and that some were capped in gold, I remembered one I saw on a recent vacation in Paris. The obelisk of Luxor is located at the Place de la Concorde, which means place of peace. This obelisk was erected to symbolize peace and placed at the spot where a guillotine used to stand. The same guillotine used to kill King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. The placement of this obelisk is very significant to Paris's history. But now I'm wondering if the placement of New York's obelisk also has meaning. When I look at this obelisk here that came from Egypt, my question is, why here? Why did they place it at this spot in Central Park?
It's no accident that the obelisk is here.
I don't think it's an accident either. How long has it been here in the park?
It's been here for 135 years, since the 1880s. It's 3,500 years old.
That's 1,500 years before Jesus' time.
That's correct. Thutmose had two of them made. The other one is in London, and they were outside of his temple in Heliopolis.
Heliopolis was the Harvard of ancient Egypt. It's where all the important pharaohs went to school. They learned what are known as the ancient mysteries, lessons we now call the 7 classic arts and sciences, which included mathematics, geometry, and astronomy. Today, all that's left of Heliopolis are ruins in Cairo, an obelisk in London, and this obelisk in New York City. So this obelisk here in Central Park, how did it get over here from Egypt?
Well, it's a really interesting story, Scott. The New York Masons, from the transporting to the paying to the actual erecting, they're responsible for the obelisk being here.
So they were involved from start to finish.
End to end, yes.
Freemasons, interesting.
And 9,000 of them marched up Fifth Avenue in full regalia.
Really?
Yes, and I have some pictures here that you can see.
This is a big group. They've got their Masonic aprons. This was important to them. But that begs the question for me, why would the modern Freemasons be at a cornerstone laying ceremony for an Egyptian obelisk?
Because the Freemason that went to Alexandria in Egypt found artifacts inside the foundation stone that link right to Masonic symbols.
Wait a minute, you're saying these are tangible artifacts that connect directly to Freemasonry?
Yes.
Now, a lot of people believe that modern Freemasonry started in 1717, but is there a connection going back to ancient Egypt? The symbolism of obelisks in Egypt are very important, but also the placement geographically, where they put them, is also important. And I'm wondering, why did they put this particular obelisk right here in this spot in Central Park? You know, Dorothy, I don't.
I knew when I got to Central Park, and after knowing that the obelisk in Central Park was connected to a twin obelisk in London, that there would be something let me know that this was confirmed. And looking at the obelisk in London and seeing here takes me back to Cleo's, where it all started as far as the being reminded, going to Central Park, Park Central. But it didn't stop there. You can see the obelisk itself in Central Park was brought there from Egypt in the 1880s, actually 1880, which is like 100 years before I left New York in 1982. Here, you see it was raised in Central Park, October 9th, 1880. And the ceremony was through an Anglo-Saxon Lodge number 137, meaning that there wouldn't have been not one black person in there. One African American wouldn't have been involved in this ceremony here. And here we go, Athletic Commander, going back to where I say Commander Avenue, where I grew up on in West Babylon, where I say, here is the temple of Amen at Heliopolis, which is dealing with the need. So the fact that this is directly connected to the need, and I'll show you something before we go any further about Central Park and another connection, which has to do with a place called Seneca Village. And Seneca Village was actually a town that was an established black community that when I got to New York in 2014, I came across that also, which was a reminder because there was a connection to Seneca Village in Orlando.
It was founded in 1825, and that, of course, is pre-emancipation when we're talking about New York specifically. basically, slavery ends in New York in 1827.
So a group of African Americans who were affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, they were the first to buy property in this area that became known as Seneca Village.
Daily life in Seneca Village would have been impacted by racial violence on a daily basis. They lived in an integrated community, so while it was a free black community, they had among them Irish neighbors and some German neighbors too, and they intentionally placed themselves there.
Seneca Village comprised approximately 70 buildings. There was 3 churches. The first church to be created was the African Union Church. This church also did have a school, and it was one of the few schools that was available for African American students. So it helps us understand Seneca Village as a place where community and church and education was very important.
I would say one of the more famous residents, if you will, was Albert Lyons. He actually lived in Lower Manhattan during the draft riots. And his daughter, Maritcha, who was a teenager at the time, she's the one who left her memoirs and really explained the horror that happened in Manhattan streets during the summer of 1863, when African Americans were basically being tortured and murdered by their fellow New Yorkers. In 1855, when the city starts thinking about a public space that will be called Central Park, they decide that Seneca Village has no value and said we would have more value if we became a public space, and we will call that public space Central Park. Of course, it really had nothing to do with that community or upholding what that community stood for.
You know, it was about 800 acres of land, and while it was not...
So after they decided to remove the black residents from the area now called Central Park, that was in 1857 when the final raising of the people out of getting them out of Central Park and making it to a point where they were never there. This was the same year that the Dred Scott case decision was made, March 6, 1857. So the idea that was a time when slavery was going to be allowed throughout the United States because they said it was unconstitutional. And so this is the place they decided to put the obelisk that I said I had to go back to New York and see, and then I run into this. So after going back to New York, not to Egypt, but going to New York because of Park Central Park, there's also the spirit of Seneca Village. Here's a translation of the obelisk in Central Park. Since we're dealing with Heliopolis, city of the sun. City of the sun, just as in SunTrust. You see the crown Horus, bull of victory, arisen in Thebes. Lord of the vulture and Uraeus crowns. That's King's Point, showing you the crown, the layout itself. Even as the sun is in heaven. In the heavens, showing you sunrise, high noon, and sunset, showing you that's in Orlando. They say when I say the connection between Central Park and Orlando, 1857, it's here. Showing you the crown. Again, that's what I said. Crown's Point. Then you see SunTrust building downtown as a crown also. Starting off at Checkers, crowns. Son of the sun. Just I said, when I was 9 years old, I started communicating with the sun. Standing at 9 years old in West Babylon. Now you'll see the sun life path showing you here. Glorified of Osiris, like the sun life giving forever. This I'm going to show you here in Orlando, the sun life path. Showing you love and Ra. All this coming from what was written thousands of years ago. I'm showing you today, here. Again, glorified of Osiris, life-giving like the sun forever. Here, you'll see that this is back in 1996, before the streets were changed as far as the signpost. When I went to visit the pyramids in Egypt, when I went to go see what came to me in my dream and what came to me in Orlando, was when I walked into this one, as I walked into the first one, the smallest one, this one reminded me of the house. That's why I went and stood against the wall. And so inside of here represented the house in the middle, which is aligned with the Hermaket, Sphinx, sunrise, high noon, sunset. And I said that it had to do with the Stargate itself. I said when I walked into the second pyramid in Giza that this reminded me of the house 5312. So I stood against the wall in the back so I can get a picture of the whole inside to show the split plan like at 5312. And this was the pyramid aligned with the Hermaket, sunrise, high noon, sunset. So when I said when they came into the house, at 5312, they came into the Stargate. And I'll show you within the movie the Stargate itself, that this house represented that pyramid where the Ra's ship landed, the Stargate, the pyramid ship itself. Here, showing you the Star Gate. Here, where everything changed, created another dimension. That's why I can show you all this now. That movie set is showing you this pyramid here. It's showing you the inside of here. Being that I was in there, took the picture, and we watched the movie, and you watched the set, you watched the design, the interior, it's showing you this. These columns, the way they are here. Not in the Great Pyramid, does not have this. It's the middle pyramid. The one I said represents the house that I showed you, a Stargate. So they made a set mimicking this, which I said is connected to the house, where they came into the same way when they came to get me, the way they came to get Ra in the movie.
do you read?
Jackson, I don't think we should eat any food here.
Well, they might consider that an insult.
Well, we don't want to offend them now, do we, Daniel?
Piece of chicken. Piece of chicken. It's good. Tastes. Tastes like chicken. Piece of chicken. Good. Jackson. You said that was an Egyptian symbol. Yeah, the eye of Ra. Would you say then that it might stand to reason if they know one Egyptian symbol? Yes. Yes.
What the hell's going on?
Seems like writing is forbidden.
As you can see, that the inside itself is showing you this one, because I was there and you see it now. And then, as he mentioned, when he went to write on the sand, and he erased it, and he said, "Writing is forbidden." Now, who could he be talking about? Whose writing was forbidden? Who was forbidden to read and write?